Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to discuss completing the application for the Georgia Firefighters Cancer Benefit Program. My name is Lindsay Albright, and I am one of your contacts for this program. I also have Megan Murray and John Hanson here with me as well. You're all available today and in the future to help answer your questions regarding this program. So today's webinar focus will be completing the application so that you can obtain a quote for the coverage required by House Bill 146. The application we will review consists of two parts: the contact information and census data. We will walk through both sections and try to address any questions you may have. At the end of the webinar, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions via the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Alternatively, please feel free to call or email us with any questions after the webinar. Since you are participating in the webinar, we hope that means you received and read the email notifications that were sent out last week. These notifications were sent to the GIRMA contacts. If you would like to modify the primary contact for this program or add a secondary contact, you will be able to do that. So if you have the email link for the application, you might want to pull that up so you can follow along and make notes if necessary. So the screen that you're seeing now is the screen that will be reflected when you click on the link. This screen contains some valuable information for you to reference. A few key points from this page are, number one, we're asking that you complete the census data for all active firefighters. If you are contemplating who qualifies as a firefighter, the definition is explained in the bill, and we have included that verbiage at the bottom of the screen in the italic writing at the bottom. The due date for the information is September 15th. This will allow us time to prepare a quote for you. The target quote delivery date will be the middle of October. There are two FAQ documents attached that you will see on each of the three screens. They are at the top on the right-hand side under related fields. One of the FAQ documents addresses billing-related questions, and the other FAQ document addresses program-related questions about the benefit itself. We encourage you to take a look at those documents as they will address a lot of questions that you may be considering. And the last item we'll mention before we get started is that you will be given the opportunity to make quarterly updates to your census data. We will send out a request to the contact person or persons each quarter so that you may provide any updates to your firefighter census data. The billing will also take place quarterly, so any adjustments made to your firefighter count will be reflected on the next quarterly invoice. If you have no changes to your census, you do not have to complete the quarterly update. However, to avoid any coverage complications, it's important to list all your active firefighters. You will not be charged unless the start date for the firefighter is at least 12 months in the past. So the bill explains that firefighters who have worked 12 months for your department are eligible. If they have not worked for the 12 months, they are not eligible for the benefit. If you go ahead and list the active firefighters, even if they have not been there the full 12 months, we will not charge you until they do become eligible. So at the bottom of this welcome page, you will see a button that says Go to My Value Survey. So you'll want to click there. So this is the first portion of the application, that is the contact information. As I mentioned earlier, we have both a primary and a secondary contact. Everyone should have a pre-filled primary contact, which is, if you're in the GIRMA program, our GIRMA contact, and if you're not a member of GIRMA, then it should be your city clerk or city manager. If this contact is not who you wish to remain as the primary, feel free to type over this contact and replace the fields with the correct contact person's information. We also have a secondary contact that could be someone else within administration, or it may be someone within the fire department that will help when completing the census data. Feel free to add a secondary contact if you desire. You do not have to. There are a few options here. At the top, you see a few gray buttons. One of them says reassign sections. So in this case, if you click reassign sections, you will be given the opportunity to reassign one or both of the application sections. So if I am not the correct contact person for either the contact or the census, and I want to reassign, you simply click by each of those items, and then you would type the new email address and name for the person who you want to reassign this application to. Under assignment type, it defaults to secondary, meaning the person that you're reassigning will be the secondary contact. They will be able to complete the application, but you as the primary contact will stay in the loop. If you are not the right contact person and you want to change this completely, you can hit the drop down, change to primary, and this user will replace you as the person primarily responsible for the collection. So you've got those two choices. And then if you desire to change the assignment, you would hit submit reassignments. You do have the option if you only want to reassign the census data. For example, if you want the fire chief to fill out census data, you could just click census data and send. He would only have access, he or she would only have access to the census data to change. In this case, I'm just going to hit cancel, but again, you would just hit submit reassignment. So this really is pretty straightforward. If you feel comfortable that your contact information is complete and you're ready to mark it as complete and move to the next section, you simply click mark as complete. It will turn green, indicating that you're ready to move on. Even if you mark as complete, you will still have the option to come back in the system using the same value collection link that you received last week in the email. You can still make changes up until the time that we provide you with a quote. This at least indicates in the system that you've completed it and you're ready to move on. Then you'll hit next page. So the next page is the second piece of the application, which is your census data. The gray box at the top are the instructions for the census data, and that's what we'll walk through, as this portion's a bit more involved than the contact section. So for the census data, you've got two options available for providing this data to us. The first option is to manually enter the data for each firefighter, and the second option is to use a spreadsheet import to upload your information in Excel. We'll go through the manual entry option first. So for option one, you'll scroll down to the bottom and you will see a little plus sign that says new firefighter schedule. You will want to click on this. All of the required or mandatory fields are in bold and have a red asterisk beside them. So we'll go ahead and add one. We will add someone as a test so that you can see exactly what you need to do. The middle, it's first, middle, and last name. The middle is not required, but if you would like to add that, feel free. The GFSTC number, this is the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council number. Each firefighter should have this number assigned to them. And if you're not sure what this number is, your fire department contact should be aware of those numbers. It is a required field, so we ask that you coordinate with the fire department to get this number. If you're not sure, if the fire department is not sure of the number either, in the instructions that were sent out, we included the website for the GFSTC. All of your firefighter numbers should be posted to their website. You'll just need to log in and pull that information. We also provided a phone number for the GFSTC should you need that. So in this case, I will make a number up for myself. And then you've got 3 questions to answer for each firefighter. So the first question is the firefighter employed or volunteer? So you'll make that selection. The second question is, does the firefighter hold a position as an employed firefighter for another entity? So this means, is the firefighter that you're filling this information out for, are they a firefighter with your entity, but also an employed firefighter with another entity? If they are, you would select yes, and if not, select no. And the third and final question is, does the firefighter hold a position as a volunteer firefighter for another entity? So again, it's a yes or no question that you'll need to complete. The default here at the top, you will see there's a checkbox for create another. So when you hit save changes and that check box is marked, it's going to automatically save the first firefighter and allow you to quickly go back in and add your next firefighter. Once you get to the last firefighter, you can simply uncheck this box and hit save changes and you will be completed. So, I don't know that that's saved. So that's the first option for the manual entry of the firefighter. The second option is to do a download spreadsheet. So a few key points here. The spreadsheet file is very specific. You should not add any columns to the data. You should not modify the headers, or the spreadsheet will not import correctly. So let me pull it up so that you can see what I am talking about. You will want to hit download spreadsheet. Right under import here, it's a red link. And often what we find is that it goes down to this bottom toolbar. You'll see an Excel file. So if you just click on that file, we'll open up. And you will see a file that looks like this. So you can hit enable editing at the top. And the first thing that you'll want to do is save this file to a place that you can easily obtain it. So I'm going to save this to my desktop. File save as, and you can save today to your desktop. Okay, what you will notice is because I did the manual entry, it will automatically show up on your spreadsheet. When you first pull up your spreadsheet, if you choose to use the import file, this will be blank unless you have entered someone in the manual route. So let's go through each of these columns to make sure it's clear. The first column is member number. The member number is going to automatically populate. You do not need to put anything in this column A. Please leave it blank. The number will automatically populate for you. So again, once you have your firefighters in there and you re-download the spreadsheet, it will populate just like it did in this case. This is the test member number 9999. But please leave this column blank. The next item, piece of information is the start date. So we just ask that you use the month, day, and year format. The next 3 columns, first, middle, and last name, are simply text. The GFSTC number, again, should be a mix of numbers and letters. And then in column G, we ask that you type the word employed or volunteer. Those are the only 2 words that will be accepted in this column. We don't need to know the location in which they're employed or volunteer, just simply employed or volunteer. And then columns H and I, those last two questions, employed firefighter with another entity or volunteer firefighter with another entity, those two should be yes or no answers as well. Again, in order for the import to work, it's very important that you follow these instructions. If you were to, type some other word, if you typed the location of the employed firefighter in column G, what will happen when you try to import is that you will get an error message and the system will not accept it. So once you get this file updated and you feel comfortable that everything's in the right format, we would ask that you save it. So I'm just gonna hit save. And again, one thing to mention, if you have census data in Excel already, you can copy and paste that data into the import file, like the name, the start date. Start date is the date of hire, and that would be the date of hire as a firefighter. So if this particular employee was an employee in a different department, say they worked in the public works department for a few years and then moved to the fire department, the start date is going to be the date of hire within the fire department. So that's very important to note. Okay, so we've saved the file. I feel good that everything's been updated. Let me just add another one so that you can see what it will look like. Okay, so I'll save it, close out, and then you'll come back to the system and you'll go back over to the right-hand side where it says Spreadsheet Import, and you will click on Choose File. So you'll want to choose the file that you just updated and hit Open, and then click Submit. By clicking Submit, that import spreadsheet is going to load in the system. You will see import summary, and it says 1 added. So we already had myself in the system and we added Megan. If there are any errors in the data, this is the screen where it will turn red and it will identify for you the columns where there's an error. So at this point, you can click on the red link, go back to schedule, and this will take you back to the census data. If you scroll down to the bottom, we'll give it a second to refresh. But the data will populate. Number of records 1. So it will, it should, in the next few minutes, it should reflect both myself and Megan as firefighters. And then at that point, if you were to download the spreadsheet again, we would both be on there. Again, keep in mind the 2 FAQ documents are right here on this screen should you want to reference them. I'll pull them up just so you can take a look. The contribution FAQ, this is going to answer and address some questions related to billing. So it gives different scenarios of, an employed firefighter with one department, an employed with one fire department, and a volunteer at a second location. Goes through the same thing with volunteer and private. Our contact email address is on this document, as well as our phone number. Megan and myself, our phone numbers are right here. So again, feel free to reach out with questions once you have a chance to go through this. The program FAQ, again, this is going to go through some of the benefits of the program and answer questions that you may have related to the coverage. So if you feel good that your census data is complete, similar to the contact screen, you would hit Mark as Complete and Next Page. If you come in the system, you make some updates, but you're not sure that you're completely ready to submit, you can hit Submit or Submit Draft right here, and it will save the data, and you can come back into the screen or come back in via that link at any time until we actually issue the quote. You'll be able to get back in the system and make changes. So we'll consider that I am ready to mark as complete, and we will go to next page. At next page, you will see one more step. So it says 1 of 2 assigned sections have been marked as complete. So in this case, and you can also see over here on the right-hand side, I have the census data marked as green because I marked it as complete, but the contact data is still yellow. So if I want to go back and mark that as complete, you can either click here or you can click on previous page. I'll go here and I'll go ahead and do mark as complete. Then you can click finished. And now you'll see 2 of 2 assigned sections have been marked as complete. If you have any notes that you want to make to us this way versus an email, feel free to add comments here. We will be able to see those and try to address them if you have a question. And then the last piece is just to hit submit, which I'm not going to do right now, but you would hit submit and you're all done. Again, you still have an opportunity, even if you submit it and mark everything as complete. If you realize you forgot someone or you want to change the contact, you can get back in the system using that same link up until the time that we issue the quote. So that is really it. We hope that it's not too cumbersome of a process for you, and hope the information that we've requested will be easy to obtain and adjust on a quarterly basis. So at this point in time, we will try to address your questions. If you don't mind using the chat feature on the right-hand side to ask them, we will go through as many as we can. And then again, if you want to give us a call or send us an email after the webinar with specific questions, we will be happy to give you a call back. Okay, so our first question from Diane is, why not distinguish full or part-time?
So, good morning, everyone. This is John Hansen. I'll take that one. The law itself, HB 146, does not distinguish between full-time and part-time firefighters. It distinguishes between employed and volunteer firefighters. So, in order to remain compliant with the law, you'll see in all of our communications, all of the materials will refer to the 2 sections of firefighters as employed or volunteer.
All right. Thank you, John. Okay, so Sandra asks regarding the date of hire. You asked, sometimes they are hired as uncertified. Does that matter?
I'll take that. Let's take that one back. I think the law is designed to distinguish or addresses certified firefighters. But let's take that one, and then we'll communicate back out to everyone once we have an answer to that.
Right. Carol asked, are hard copies available for the webinar? Carol, this is just the actual origami website that I've got pulled up. I did not put together a PowerPoint. I can send you some screenshots and some notes though. So we'll be happy to provide that. Alternatively, we have recorded the webinar, so we can also send you the link to go back and listen to it again if you would like. All right, Consuelo asked, do you have to fill out the spreadsheet and the census data manual entry? No, you can choose one or the other. You certainly do not need to do both. So we've got both options there for you, and whatever is easiest for you would be fine, but certainly do not need to do it both ways. All right, next question is from Helen. You ask, our department is volunteer, but our chief works full-time at another fire department. I understand that I'll mark yes on employed elsewhere, but does that mean both cities will be charged? The answer there is no. he would only be charged where he is employed. So your city, if it's a volunteer fire department and you have firefighters that are employed with another entity, the place that they are employed will be paying for that person, that firefighter. All right, the next question is from Teresia. And your question is, what is the billable rate per employee?
So at this point, we're finalizing the billable rates. As a guide, I would use it's less than $300 per firefighter. And there is a distinction in rate or premium between volunteer firefighters and employed firefighters.
Great. Jane Ann asks, do they come off our policy once they have terminated their employment, or do we have to cover them for a certain period of time? And the answer there is no. Once they're terminated, you do not have to continue paying the premium for that firefighter. However, the firefighter has the option to pay for it themselves if they would like, but it's not the city's responsibility at that time once they're terminated. Okay, the next question is from Elizabeth, and you ask, is the employer responsible for paying for this or the employee? And the answer there is the employer is. The city is responsible for this. Okay, another question from Teresia. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. If an employed firefighter is working for two departments and a claim is filed, how will it be dispersed or billed?
Teresa, this is John again. The claim, so in terms of the claim, the firefighter would be, assuming it's compensable, the firefighter would receive one benefit, even though the premium is being paid at a reduced rate between two entities. So always on the benefit side of the question, a firefighter, if determined to be eligible for the benefit, they would receive one benefit. What we're doing is applying reduced rates based on the different spots that a firefighter may be employed and or volunteering.
All right, great. Okay, next question from Jeff. Do we enter the employee immediately after being hired or wait until their 1 year anniversary? So I think we've decided that the easiest thing administratively for you all would be to go ahead and list all of your active firefighters, even if they have not been there for the full 12 months. You will not be charged for them until they become eligible at the 12-month mark. The system that we're using for rating will automatically note the date of eligibility, and that will not be until 12 months after their date of hire or their start date. So go ahead and just list all the active firefighters and just know that we are not going to charge you until they're eligible. Okay, part 2 of Sandra's question. If someone was hired over a year ago as uncertified and received their certification this year, will they be included in this? Go ahead.
So again, this is a very similar question, and I've got this, and we'll get this back out to everyone. The question then is, as I see it, and it sounds like you're right on it too, is it the date of certification when the clock starts, or is it the date of hire? So let me get some guidance and get back to everyone on that.
All right. Next question from Trinija. We have firefighters that volunteer at another agency, but they are paid volunteers. Does that mean we share the premium cost? So
if in this instance, if for volunteers, and I have had conversations with a number of firefighters who receive some compensation for the work that they're doing, the council has made very clear that that sort of compensation for number of fires fought, expenses, that's not employment per se. So as you think about where your firefighters are, whether they're in a voluntary bucket or they're employed, if they are volunteers and they're receiving some stipend for the work that they do, they still would remain as volunteers under the program. Once they move to let's say a W-2 position where they actually were employees of a particular city, then they would then transition to that employee under the employee program.
Okay, next question is from Lynn. You have one volunteer that works with the city and county, which will be charged.
In that instance, both would be charged at a reduced rate, though. So it isn't as though both entities are paying the full premium. They would both be charged the full rate, which essentially would be the necessary premium for that one firefighter.
Right. Question from Edward. Is the per employee rate $300 annually?
It's less than $300, Edward, but that is annual, by the way. Good question.
All right. Question from Diane. How long after leaving our employee can they file a claim? I would say that means how long after leaving the city could they file a claim?
So in this instance, once an employee has left the service or terminated or for any number of reasons is no longer a firefighter, they're given a window of time, which is approximately 30 days, to take the coverage with them. So if, for example, they don't choose to take the coverage and they're diagnosed a year from their date of termination, the program would not cover them. So what's important is that a firefighter makes certain that he or she is exercising that opportunity once they leave the service to carry the coverage forward with them. If they don't, and they're diagnosed after their date of termination, that benefit is not compensable.
All right. Next question from Tanita. If they are employed full-time somewhere else and they are part-time with us, who is responsible? Okay, so the answer to this one is the employee, the full-time.
Is a person employed in part-time at another place?
Yes, so employed full-time. So I assume, Tanita, you're meaning employed full-time and employed part-time somewhere else.
So in that instance, that is actually employed in two locations, so that would be a reduced premium situation. You'd want to make sure that the firefighter is identified in both locations.
Right. So both entities that the firefighter is employed, whether it's full-time or part-time, should be reporting that person, but it would be a reduced rate for both.
Because they're employed in two locations.
Right. All right. Next question from Meg. How do we handle employees hired this year after we submit this? So in that case, Meg, that would be picked up in the audit. So because we'll give you the opportunity quarterly to update your census, once you submit the census and we provide the quote. So I would say if you submit this week, and then between now and October, you hire additional firefighters or terminate, you can still get back in and modify the census if you so desire. And that way the quote that we provide in October will be current. Then anyone from the time we quote through the end of the year that's hired, when we send out the request for the quarterly audit for Q1, then that's the time that you would make those adjustments. All right, next question from Karen. What date do we use if they used to work for us, they left and came back? Do we use the most recent date of hire?
Yes, the most recent.
Yeah, and that is yes. They do actually have to start that eligibility period over again. So that's the way that we're interpreting the legislation, the bill, is that if they've been a firefighter for 10 years and they move to a new city or a new county, that 12-month period starts over. Right.
We validated that too with the council to be certain that was their understanding as well. But the terminology in HB 146 is 12 consecutive months for eligibility.
All right. Next question from Helen. If we are a fully volunteer department, do we need to complete the application? And the answer is yes. Volunteer departments are still subject to this law, so you do need to complete the application, and there will be a premium associated with it. The volunteer rate is a reduced rate compared to the fully employed department, so it will not be as much as the employed. Okay, Mervin says the audio is cutting in and out. I apologize, but we'll try to answer if you have any questions. We'll try to get those answered for you, and hopefully the recorded version you can hear a little bit better. Next question from Melody. What is the definition of volunteer?
We're holding at this point, if you look at the definition, volunteer is mentioned in the verbiage that goes along with the application. That does mention employed and volunteer. If you look through that, it's good guidance. It's a little bit of it's a little formal, but you'll see that for a volunteer firefighter, there's the need for that annual certification, which I think is really, if you're considering a volunteer in that circumstance, that's an active volunteer at your location who is certified in the state, right? So those two hinge points are most important. One is that they're active volunteers, and two, that they are certified per the state reg that's listed in the application.
All right, next question from Teresia. Will a baseline physical medical review be required for firefighters prior to implementation of the policy?
The answer to that is no. And I'll also make clear, and I want to reference this, I've gotten this question from a fair number of folks over the last week. We are not asking tobacco status questions either.
Okay, next question from Pam Herring. Did I understand correctly that if they are employed part-time, they are still listed as employed, regardless of how often they work? The answer there is yes.
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 And let me explain why. Again, our effort here is to create a program that conforms as closely to the legislation, to HB 146, as we can. There are instances within that legislation that are similar to what you're describing. The best way at this point to conform to the law is to follow that guidance in terms of that distinction between their employed and their volunteer.
Okay, next question from Lynn. We pay our volunteers with a W-2, so even though they are a volunteer, I still mark them as an employee just because of the W-2.
In that instance, I think they probably would then be, they're correctly described. If they're W-2s and you're identifying them as employed firefighters, then I think the guidance there is that they are in fact employed firefighters.
Karen, is policy information sent to each firefighter? The answer there is no. The firefighters will be covered, but the policy itself, the policy documentation, is going to be sent to the cities. If you choose to provide that to them, then you can, but the benefits should be coordinated through the city, the administration or HR contact, if there is a claim.
One other thing too, we're working on a website that hopefully will be up here in a month or so. And on that website, we'll have a number of resources. So to this question, if someone wanted to look at, for example, the plan design, or they wanted to know some of the limitations within the contract or how the contract works, they'll have access to that information via the Georgia Firefighters Cancer Program website. So it will be there. It'll just be in a place that any city, any county, any firefighter would have access to if they chose to.
All right, next question from Elizabeth. Do we need to let GMA know when an employee is terminated? If so, how do we submit that? So we are going to have quarterly audits of the census data. So once per quarter, you will, or whoever the contact person in the system is, will get a notification to go in and update the census. It will be the similar format to what we've just reviewed today, but you'll have an opportunity to go in and to make those changes. If you've had an employee that's been terminated, then you'll go in and there will be a new field that will have the termination date. So it's not currently on there because it doesn't apply at this point, but on the quarterly audits or the quarterly census request, there will be a field for termination date. And that is where you would notify us. You don't need to notify us each time you have a change in your census. Once per quarter is sufficient. But again, we will prompt you to make those changes. You don't need to, set a reminder to go in and do that. We will send you a new link, just like you got for this initial value collection, and you'll be able to update the census at that time. Next question from Heather. How do we know if the employee's full-time employer is covering the firefighter?
I think in that instance, Heather, and this is the guidance that we've given folks who have asked this question, is to be certain that the firefighter and or the chief, the appropriate party, is communicating with the other entity to be certain that that firefighter is covered appropriately. But we want to be certain is that no one really falls through the cracks. So to the extent that someone is employed with an entity that is not a city, then you would want to be certain that that firefighter contacts and that they are appearing on, let's say it's in the county, they're appearing on that county census correctly.
All right, thanks, John. Next question from Jeff. Our volunteers are paid per diem, but issued a W-2 at the end of the year. Does this classify them, as a volunteer or an employee?
So this question, the details here seem closer to the guidance that I received from the Fire Council on distinguishing between employee and volunteer firefighters. It is less a function of whether they're receiving some sort of compensation or expense remittance or remuneration for the work that they're doing. It's more in terms, and we look to you for this, but it's more in terms of if they are, they are an active employee within the city, then that would distinguish them in the employee category. If they're volunteers and they're receiving some form of compensation that is sort of like expenses submitted, that sort of thing, or small per diem, that sort of issue, then those are correctly described as volunteer firefighters.
All right. Next question from Cedric. What type of cancers are covered through this policy?
I don't have them at hand. If you look at HB 146, and we'll make all of this available, but there's a list of the specific cancers that are covered under the bill. That's probably the easiest way. So we'll figure out how to get that back to everyone.
All right. Next question from Karen. If an employee leaves, do we notify you or just leave them off the next quarterly update? So Karen, for the quarterly census update, there will be a spot to enter a termination date. So for that employee that leaves your department or your city, you will update that particular individual with the termination date. So we will know that termination has ceased as of that date.
The other piece of it too, where you have an employee, firefighter is terminated or leaving the service, this goes back to the question of allowing them the opportunity to take the coverage with them. So we're working on that now. It's very likely that that material will reside on the website as well. So when a firefighter decides after a period of time they're leaving the service, they would go to the website. They would very likely coordinate with you for this, but go to the website to gather that information and the instruction as to how they would continue that benefit and paying for it themselves, but continuing that benefit into the future.
Okay, next question from Meg. What is the status of employees who are currently diagnosed with cancer?
So, Meg, employee or firefighters diagnosed with cancer would not be eligible for the benefit. This program starts January 1st, so it really triggers off a diagnosis of cancer on or after that effective date of coverage. It is not designed to cover cancers that have been diagnosed prior to the creation of the program.
Okay, next question from Nan. Our firefighters are paid per call that they answer. If they receive a 1099 instead of a W-2, would they still be employed rather than volunteer?
I think those firefighters do fit that volunteer category. That was a very specific detail that the council provided to me. I think that's relatively common where they're paid per fire fought. And their instruction to me and their guidance to me is that those are volunteer firefighters.
All right, next question from Pam. Our firefighters only receive a reimbursement for their contribution to their pension plan. The amount is not even enough to send a 1099. Do we show this as a volunteer?
Yes, I think that's a volunteer as well. That's not, again, if the effort here is to determine which bucket, and I think it's full-time active employee or an employee of a city is easy to define. If it's falling into categories, and this is a very good question in terms of pension reimbursement, that sort of thing, those are still volunteers.
Okay. I know we've had a number of people that have asked for the recording. So what we'll do is in the next little bit, the next few hours, we will send everybody that participated today, we will send you an email with the link to the recorded version. So you can go back and listen to it if needed, or forward it on if you need to send the presentation to someone else. Alternatively, like I mentioned in the beginning, you've got our phone numbers and our email addresses, so feel free to reach out with questions, because we have certainly learned through this process that every situation is a bit different. So we've learned a lot and can hopefully answer your questions as they come in. So I don't see that anybody else has chatted any other questions. We'll give a few more minutes just in case you think of anything, but we appreciate everybody for taking the time out today to join us, and we hope that this was helpful and hope that some of the questions people asked were questions that you may have had too. So thanks again, and like I said, we'll send everybody an email with the recorded version.